most devotees are there actually and living such a lifestyle. So we are very grateful to Maharaj in ISKCON. The entire committee is very, very grateful that Maharaj is inspiring through his own lifestyle, the way he lives actually. He walks the talk. And we are very, very fortunate to see Maharaj in Kanyadesh. First time we have been hearing this topic actually in Kanyadesh. We all recall this. We had a campaign last year, the Sri campaign. Under the guidance of Maharaj, all the Maharaj disciples, they have taken a wonderful 1 week seminar. But now, through Maharaj directly, we are hearing for the first time this wonderful topic. So let's welcome Maharaj in Kanyadesh, and especially in Sham Siddhartha Mataji's house. We take shelter of holy name to welcome Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So before we begin, I'll request everyone to please pull your mobile phone out and put it on silent mode. And whoever comes later on and sit next to you, please convey this message to those people who are coming next to you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Middle.
Okay.
Come and sit.
But I don't mean you. You holding the camera. Yeah. Whenever there is a kirtan, those who are playing the instruments should be confined to a mini orchestra. Otherwise, they go the wrong way. I don't know how my throat, voice will work.
Some warm water,
Yeah, actually.
warm water.
Yeah, lukewarm or warm.
What warm?
Three Rajagachars Stotra Satta Sri Simaji Divine Grace Tiraboy Charanarvan Bhakti Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Skandiviti Saudhyacharyas Divine Grace Sri Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki
Jai.
Then Sikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Radha Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopal Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki
Jai.
Shri Vrindavan Mitra Dham Ki
Jai.
Shri Dwarka Dham Ki
Jai.
Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki
Jai.
Shri Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki
Jai.
Shri Mayapur Chandradayan Mandir Ki
Jai.
Gangamayi Jugammayi Ki
Jai.
Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki
Jai.
Harinam Sankirtan Ki
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki
Jai.
Transcendental Distribution Ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Shri Nitai Ki
Jai.
Shri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Krishna Balaram Ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Giri Govardhan Ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Sri Radha Madhav Ki
Jai.
Jai Nitai Gaur Pimanand
Hari Hari Bol.
All Hari Shri Krishna
Hare Krishna.
Hari Shri Krishna
Hare Krishna.
Hari Shri Krishna
Hare Krishna.
all that is to Sri Guru to Sri Gauranga, all that is to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Dakshuramiritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Nastapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Gadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahana Raghunatam Vidam Tvam Sajivam Advaitam Savadhutam Parijanasahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahamana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamsha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Namastute Lakshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Vansha Kalpatarudasya Sindhu Jayavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama
Everyone may kindly fold their hands, holding them close to your heart, and repeat the following two short mantras. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Sarabhyay Namaha.
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 Mukam karoti vasaram tvam gum langayate girinna yat kripatamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataram yat kripatamaham bande Shri Gurum Dinataram. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Hare
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Hare Rama.
Rama Rama.
Rama Rama.
Hare
Hare Hare.
Jai Sri Krishna Mahaprabhu ki. Jai Sri Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our program this evening and thank our hosts for making the necessary arrangements and all those involved as well. We are continuing actually a series of, I guess you could say, discourses or talks on subject matters related to a very major, very important aspect of the Krishna consciousness movement, which has to do with what Srila Prabhupada referred to as 50% of his mission yet to be fulfilled. Even after 50 years of Srila Prabhupada making that statement, many of our devotees still are not aware that what this actually means, and therefore some devotees have made it a point to try and elaborate to help and facilitate how this 50% of Srila Prabhupada's mission can actually become realized as was desired by Srila Prabhupada. We are living in a society, and we're part of a civilization today, which is actually very, very different from what a society or civilization should be. We have very clear and specific guidelines and instructions in our Shastra as to how society should function, what are the various aspects which make up what we call an ideal society. And there's a whole, it's a whole science actually. We discussed a few days ago, one of our topics was on the Vedic sociology. Sociology, the science of organizing a society in such a way that the individuals and members within that society can best more easily, more quickly, more naturally attain both the primary goal of life, which is to become self-realized, as well as more easily be able to meet their basic necessities of life. So part of all of and therefore this evening we have chosen given the title of Building a Vedic Community.
Ginger tea, Maharaj.
Ginger tea. I was just meditating on ginger tea. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. So although we are far away, far removed from that, and we may also feel that is it really possible? Is it really practical to even think about reestablishing such communities, because it's very remote to what we are experiencing today. One aspect that we need to always keep in mind is that what is taught, what is presented, what is explained in our Vedic literatures, what is given by the Supreme Lord, and what is spoken as well and further elaborated upon by the acharyas, those who are representing the Lord and endeavoring to assist in realizing the mission of the Lord. These are topics and subject matters based on principles that are not meant to change, on principles and concepts which are actually perfect. And therefore, when society is being driven or led by individuals who are not having this knowledge, who are not followers of the Vedic teachings, then naturally those ideal principles of life, both in terms of our individual lives as well as communities and society, they become changed in a major way, and it brings all kinds of disruption and chaos actually within society, as we are seeing today. So let me go directly into the topic. I thought I had my glasses on. There
Yes,
we
sir.
are. Yes. Okay. Thank you. And we will, as we've been doing in the last few days, after this presentation, we'll give a little bit of time, we'll have time for some discussion if any questions are there, and we'll show a short video as well. Okay, and just to keep track of the time here. Yeah. So building Vedic communities. Srila Prabhupada had this to say on the topic of Vedic communities. Before I came to your country, I was thinking to establish an ideal Vedic community. So please work very hard to make New Vrindavan grow. The first ideal community that Srila Prabhupada worked or encouraged. This is in a letter to one of his early disciples, Hayagriva, written way back in 1970. So in other words, Srila Prabhupada actually, even before coming to the West or going to the West, spoke about community, specifically Vedic community. Way back in 1956, he spoke about Gita Nagari, communities based on the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is, I always like to share this particular photo. It's actually a photo of a painting that someone did of a scene in Cambodia. Who has been to Cambodia? I do encourage devotees to visit Angkor Wat, which is the famous the largest Vishnu temple in the world, actually, where one can see the that's it to you. By going to places like Cambodia, especially Cambodia, one can see remnants of the Vedic culture. Not only in terms of the temples that are there, but also in terms of the lifestyle. The majority of people are still living in villages similar to India. And there are many, many cows also, beautiful cows. Cows originally came from India, actually, because quite a few hundred years back, this whole civilization and the building, specifically the building of these temples, was done with the help of Brahmanas from India. We know from our Vedic writings, Srila Prabhupada also explains how Vedic culture once upon a time was spread all over the world. So this is also reminding us, should remind us of Vrindavan, which is the ideal village that we should be meditating upon. Agrarian culture, which is a culture connected with land, with cows, with nature, is the bedrock. We say the bedrock means the foundation of Vedic civilization. Very important to understand. When we go away from this foundation of Vedic culture, it means we are making it very difficult for individuals and society to actually be successful in life, both materially and spiritually. Yeah. So building Vedic communities, these are the areas we will cover. What is Vedic community or village? The second aspect is very, very important. 7 constituents for an ideal community or village. Actually, this we'll see. This is taken from the Kautilya Arthashastra, written actually by Chanakya Pandit, and that is especially meant for referring to aspects of governance, Vedic, let's say, responsibility or the work of Kshatriyas in society. Setting up a Vedic community, what are some of the components involved? What are the 30 qualities of a human being? How Vedic communities relate to Varna Dharma, and some specific references which I'll share with all of you. And by reading these references, we can understand more clearly. So what is Vedic community? Vrindavan conception, this is Srila Prabhupada speaking here. Vrindavan conception, the idea of Vrindavan is a transcendental village without any botheration of the modern industrial atmosphere. Right? Means it is focused on things that are totally natural. My idea, what is continuing here, is to create an atmosphere of spiritual life where people in bona fide order of social divisions, that means within the system of Varna and Asrama, will live there independently, completely depending on agricultural produce and milk from the cows. Then Prabhupada continues, persons who live there will accept the bare necessities of life to maintain the body and soul together, and the major part of time should be engaged in the development of Krishna consciousness. This is another letter written way back in 1968. So in other words, from the very beginning, Prabhupada had this in mind, how to create communities. Should put a sign at the door before people enter. Interesting music. Second point, 7, everyone has their choice, huh? 7 essential constituents. So you just take the bag out if you can't stop. This is very important for anyone who's in a leadership position, or anyone who has a business, or anyone who wants to understand about how to organize a community. And this is essentially given for those who are meant to govern a nation or a country. So Chanakya in his Kautilya Arthashastra explains these 7 essential constituents or aspects that make up, that help a state or a nation or a country to become successful. Now, Vedic culture is such that we can take these concepts and we can apply them in different areas, which some people have done actually in their individual business, as you'll see. So this is the original reference given by Chanakya. For a country to be, you need to have a qualified king, isn't it? You need a leader, a king. That leader needs to have a good minister who will assist them in so many different ways. At least one minister, usually more than one minister. Then, naturally, a king needs a kingdom, needs a place to govern. Number 4, within that kingdom, a fort where normally it's a palace, which is protected, and therefore there's a need within the fort of both a treasury and an army, isn't it? And allies. These are the 7 basic aspects that make up, that help make up a successful kingdom. And these same 7 principles, I'll show in the next slide, can be applied in other scenarios as well. And the scenarios we'll look at are any kind of organization and also within a village. So the 7 points that we just mentioned, they'll come up under the column on the left, the state, and then how it is translated within an organization and within a village. We'll be able to see this. Naturally, we'll look at the center column. Within any organization, you need to have a leader. Within that organization, you need to have a manager. This is similar to a minister. You need to have a market where you will introduce your goods. You need to have an office to organize and manage things. Naturally, finances also need to be there. You need to have people who will help introduce your produce, and you need to have friends, allies. Allies means keeping good relations with neighbors. The same thing in the village. Village head, advisor, land, etc. The point here, 2 points. One is that this is a very scientific and very, well thought out, we could say, formula for making anything actually successful. And we can learn from this how we can apply it within any community that we establish as well. Now, in setting up a Vedic community, I just chose some aspects or many points to consider. Naturally, one needs to select a proper location. And there are guidelines given in the Shastra as to where a village should be, where a fort should be. Most of us read very less and know very less what is actually contained in our Shastra, unfortunately. There's, of course, our main Shastra, which is for us something we should be hearing or reading every day, is our Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. But there are many other Vedic literatures that give all kinds of information in a very practical day-to-day activities, especially for those living in villages. One needs to also consider what is the condition of the land in terms of soil, in terms of vastu, in terms of who are the neighbors, whether one has proper access, etc. Actually, in the last few years, more and more devotees within our society, and more people outside of our society, common people, are beginning to understand how modern day setup, modern day society, and especially urbanized, what is being promoted, what we have seen in the last quite a few decades, this exodus from the villages. People are leaving, have been leaving the villages at a very alarming rate, and which is causing all kinds of imbalances actually, and leaving our villages in a very poor state of affairs, where we practically don't have people who can continue to take up agriculture, which means if food production is stopped, one may be living in the city, but he will not have access to food, because that's where the food comes from. Another aspect in terms of setting up community, minimum, I mean, probably the smallest village, there are different sizes. There are big villages that have maybe 10,000, 20,000 people, and there are villages that have maybe less than 100 people. So you have a whole variety of, but the minimum for some, let's say, group of devotees who are interested to begin a community, or maybe go to an existing community, is difficult to do alone. So therefore, families who are thinking along this line need to come together, need to discuss, need to plan, etc. The finances naturally is an important component, because one has to purchase land. Previously, in the Vedic times, people did not purchase land. I mean, we cannot imagine how that was, but the land actually belongs, ultimately, if the land belongs to Krishna. Land, we read in Shastra, used to be registered, that was a practice, used to be registered in the name of deities. Deities had so much of land, and it was the system that the local brahmanas, actually it's the brahmanas who are ultimately meant to oversee, but they give the responsibility to the king, to a qualified king. There's a whole process or procedure. We have a village, for example, in Indonesia that was started 23, 24 years ago. And that small village, which is on about 200 acres of land, has been recognized by the government. And at some particular point in time, we had an official ceremony. There were two ceremonies, just like in marriage, you have like Vedic marriage and then civil, recognized by the government. So our village, our first ceremony was with the government officials, and they all came and they declared, okay, this village is recognized by the government, and they give a stipend, a small amount, to the head of the village. Of course, we choose the head of the village. And then maybe a few days after that, we had our Vedic system, Jagya. And in that ceremony, the priest, the Purohit, at one point, he, I don't know what they have in India. In Indonesia, I'm sure they have something similar because the whole culture of Indonesia comes from India. They have what they call a kris, a sword. At some point, the Purohit takes a sword and recites mantras that are there in the Shastra. And I don't know the original Sanskrit mantra, but the meaning is as follows: I am now giving you this sword and giving you the responsibility to organize and manage and protect this land and this community. And I'm giving you this sword, kris, which you should not overuse nor underuse. Means that the Kshatriyas are a very essential part of any community because they are meant to maintain what we call law and order. And of course, in the Vedic times, that was in keeping with the established principles that are there, in the Shastra. So just to continue briefly here, skills. Nowadays, this is a big problem, and it's a common question that is being asked. If for those who might be thinking of relocating, and I'll be very honest, I definitely encourage those who are in a position to relocate in villages, because actually this is one of the main themes and points that I'm trying to get across, that Srila Prabhupada also was trying to explain to us, that the Vedic norm, whereby we can more easily meet our various necessities of life, and especially where we can more easily practice and develop our Krishna consciousness, is in a more sattvic environment. Villages traditionally by nature are in a more sattvic, of a more sattvic nature than we find obviously in today's cities. So naturally, because most of us are not having the various skills that are needed, one needs to develop some of these basic skills. But actually, one needs to have a master plan for whatever property one may be having. And also for any excess produce, although that is not the primary objective, but I'll mention this in a few minutes. Srila Prabhupada was very specific that agriculture, the profession of agriculture, is not meant to be a money-making undertaking. That comes up actually in the next slides. No, even before that. This is something very important. I've mentioned a few times. 3 gifts of nature. This is the actual quote from Grandfather Bhishma Dev, who explains that there are 3 gifts that go by the same name in Sanskrit. I think it's go, in reference to cow, and that are productive of equal merits. Indeed, these 3 gifts confer the fruition of every wish. The 3 objects whose gifts are of such a character are, that's the old English for cows. Kind. Anyone familiar with that word? No. There's old English. Means cows, earth, and knowledge. And he continues, there is no object of gift higher than these gifts. This is from the Mahabharata, Dana Dharma Parva, chapter 69. A very, very important instruction that Grandfather Vishnudev is giving, explaining that actually for society to be successful, one needs to have these 3 aspects. One needs to be connected with cows, with land, and with the cultivation of knowledge. And there are 2 very important principles of self-sufficiency in the Vedic culture. One is produce only what you need. This is actually very deep, has a very deep meaning. Agriculture, as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, is not meant to be a business enterprise. Food is not meant to be a commodity that we sell. In the same way that knowledge is, in the Vedic culture, in the Vedic context, is not something that we should be selling. That's why modern education today is not at all in keeping with this principle, and therefore it is not proper. It is not correct. Food is mainly meant to be grown for family consumption and free distribution. If there is excess, then trade can be done. The second principle of self-sufficiency is use only what you produce. Granted, this is not at all easy. It's also not easy to become pure devotees, but we are still striving and endeavoring for that, because we know that that's the goal. And unless we become pure devotees, we're still going to continue suffering in the material world. So in a similar way, there are principles given in the Shastra, which initially seem like, wow, how is this possible? But those are the standards. And when there are proper leaders, qualified leaders, when there are brahmanas to direct and guide such leaders, then these things are possible. We read about this in the Shastra, that when such type of principles were followed, then society was able to follow these principles. So these 2 principles are 2 essential Vedic principles related to sustainability and self-sufficiency. Again, we are very, very far from that, but that is actually what is given in the Shastra. In a very important section in the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada, it is Narada Muni who speaks about the 30 qualities that need to be developed for one to be recognized as a human being. And in one of those purports, Srila Prabhupada explains that it is among such individuals who have these qualities that we more easily can actually introduce Varnashramadharma, which is quite practical as well. And these are the first four of these qualities are mentioned here in that order: Satyam, truthfulness; Daya, compassion; Tapa, discipline or austerity; and four is Shocham, cleanliness. And these naturally relate to the four pillars of Dharma. These relate to the four principles. These relate to the four vows that we take at initiation, isn't it? That's why initiation and the following these four principles is like an absolute necessity to actually create proper societies, to actually come to the mode of goodness. And there are 16, or rather 26 more qualities that I'm not listing here, but that can be found in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 11. Yes, in the chapter, The Perfect Society for Social Divisions. Vedic communities and Daiva Varnashrama Dharma. We touched on this the other day, how education is a very essential component within society. And there is the natural division of formal education, as well as non-formal education. For the boys, formal education is within the system of Gurukula, whereas non-formal education is in relation to the grazing of cows. And there's other education for the Matajis. We had a glimpse of that when we showed the video yesterday. There's education for all the members of society, but it will vary from one group to another group. It is very clearly defined how Vedic economy, from this verse from the 18th chapter, Krishi Gorakshavanijam, Vedic economy, which is the most sustainable and natural economy, is based on natural agriculture and cow protection. And these are the three gifts of nature that I mentioned a few minutes ago. These are the references I would request, actually, and invite devotees to make a note of these, and whenever you have an opportunity to actually read these, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, chapters 11 to 15. Secondly, the essay on Gita Nagari by Srila Prabhupada, which was written way back in 1956. And also this other book entitled Speaking About Varnashrama, a compilation of statements given by our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, compiled by a group of devotees, but written by Hare Krishna Dasi. So this gives an overview of the importance of Vedic communities. Our modern civilization is such that we are actually giving less importance to villages. Isn't it? There, as I mentioned a little earlier, there is an exodus from our villages, and this is actually creating all kinds of difficulties and problems. And we as devotees who are meant to know, to understand about Dharma, part of Dharma is to understand how important it is to maintain villages, not only to maintain villages, but to know, to understand that the majority of any community, let's say within a country, are actually meant to live this more simplified lifestyle. In the history books, when we read, we are being taught that actually village life used to be, it's something of the past. Now we have become advanced, we are modern, we don't need this way of living, but that is actually not according to Shastra. And and we can see all the ill effects that have been produced because of our actually deviated from these principles which are mentioned in the Shastra. Our founder, Sharya Srila Prabhupada, he went to great extent actually to explain many of these aspects, and he was very much requesting and urging his followers, his devotees, members of the society, to actually take up this more simplified lifestyle to minimize our various necessities of life, and in this way be more in line with what our Shastra is actually giving us. This will be another presentation. So I'd like to exit from this presentation now and share, let's see, a short video that will depict one of our communities. You're speaking about Vedic communities. Since many, many years, some of our devotees in different countries of the world have endeavored to actually materialize this particular instruction given by Srila Prabhupada. But we should know it's not simply meant to be a small farm communities here and there. Actually, Prabhupada gave the following instruction: wherever we have a main temple, just like we have city temples around the world, wherever we have a main temple within a 50-kilometer radius, there should be a community, a farm community, where there are cows, where we're producing food, and where we are offering natural, pure, wholesome food and milk to at least to the deities, and ultimately to our devotee community as well. This was like a very basic instruction that Srila Prabhupada gave, but he wanted to go beyond that. This was like meant to be the beginning to again reconnect us with nature, reconnect us with the land, with the cows. But Prabhupada's long-term goal and objective was to actually reestablish what is meant to be the norm in society, which is, as we tried to explain in the beginning of this presentation, an agrarian lifestyle that is very much based on land, cows, and the cultivation of knowledge. So let's see here. We have a number of communities. Yeah, we will go. Yesterday we went to Hungary. Today we'll go to Sweden. It's okay. We'll take everyone to Sweden. They have a nice community since many years in Sweden. Not a large community, but I had the opportunity to visit a few years back. It was part of research I was conducting. So let's see again. Oh, Yes, we do. Okay.
Mike.
One of these days you have to get one of those things or speaker.
Forward Maharaj.
Huh?
It will work with without even wire.
Huh?
But speaker will work without wire. Bluetooth speaker. Yeah, but we forward to bring.
Because every time we want to use this idea. So seems to be they're located actually near this very beautiful lake.
Första gången ändå, hur gick det? Det gick bra. Ja, vi behövde improvisera lite grann för att det fattas en del saker som vi måste skaffa. Så här redskap som vi behöver.
So they had a training program.
Så behöver vi lite komplettera lite saker som har gått sönder eller försvunnit. Men det gick bra. De var lite ovana i början, men de kom snabbt in i det. Och mot slutet så började de faktiskt samarbeta.
Det såg lite kämpigt ut i början när de kom in och tittade på det hela. Han verkar glad någonstans. Han fortsatte då att köra på. Och jag måste faktiskt säga att det var beundransvärt bra. Det är de kraftiga killar, alltså vuxna. Så jag måste säga att jag är positivt överraskad att de kunde göra så, gå så mycket och göra så mycket som de borde.
I see Bhakti.
Odlingssäsongen här började för ett par veckor sedan och förra veckan så började jag så in de grödor för tidig skörd här i växthuset. Och det är framförallt då sallad, det är spenat, det är lite tidig mangold och örtkryddor som då är det som man kan få så här tidigt på våren. Redan om 3-4 veckor så kommer man kunna börja skörda det här växthuset. Och sen har jag klippt också i januari månad så klippte jag inrankan som ligger här i hörnet. En blå och en grön. Och de förväntar sig också börja skjuta snart. Och sen är det andra saker som ska in, men det kommer så småningom. Det är tomater. De ligger redan på groddning så att säga på varmare plats inne. Men de kommer in sen när det blir maj månad. När det bara blir lite varmare.
Slogan är
Sång.
tillfället att samarbeta med en gynna. Nu, utom att Peru och jag gör lite kan even tjänst på fritid. Han jobbar under veckan, men nu i helgen då har vi lite frisk luft här på landet och gör en even tjänst på Panchatattva. Och han är väldigt entusiastisk som ger mig gamla gubben energi också. Och för mig det är underbart att ha ett samband med Panchatattva's dam här. Jag som är gäst här då och då. Jag kan komma tillbaka hit då och då och återupprätta mitt förhållande till gudgestalterna här och praktiskt arbete. Det är fantastiskt att ha ett samband med jord och skog. Och det luktar gott här när man sågar. Så dessutom det är fint med samarbete, det är gemensamt samarbete som många är involverade med. Lokanath Prabhu han lyfter in virket och Trivanga Prabhu har projekterat förekommande bygget och Dhruva Prabhu hjälper med att stapla virke och så vidare. Det är många händer gör arbete. En annan sista sak är att det är dygd att använda vad man har. Ibland kan du tänka, men det är billigt att köpa partivirke från en stor leverantör. Men det sågverket och klivsågen och hiveln och alla dessa utrustning har installerats här med blutsvetatorer av hängivna som offrar det bästa åren av deras liv att kunna infrastruktur det här. Så det är bara underbart att kunna tillgodogöra det arbetet genom att använda vad man har och producera egna virken. I senaste åren har sågen varit tyvärr stillastående. Men nu är vi återupplivade och smörja fettnipplarna och få igång det gamla maskineriet. De är byggda att hålla. Så det går bra. Man måste kanske reparera lite där, men huvudsakligen det fungerar bra trots att det är gammalt. En härlig svensk konstruktion från 60-talet måste vara byggd ungefär.
Jai Sri Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Even in very harsh conditions, we see here, actually, Sweden is not a warm country, especially north Sudan. Very close to the Scandinavian countries, which are very cold. Still, the whole process of Krishna consciousness is being introduced and followed in such places as well. Can put the lights on for any possible comments or questions on like topic this evening.
Like, yes.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
I have a small doubt.
Yes.
You said devotees should eat when they grow, but they are large part of the world, they cannot do anything. So what according to Shastras are the instructions for people living in those regions?
There are injunctions in Shastra indicating or telling that people should not be living in such places where one is not growing. You know, actually, there's a Shastric injunction telling that if in where you're staying, if you cannot have mango trees and papaya trees and such, that one should not actually live there. We see in the history, throughout history and even today, how the vast majority of the population in the world has been in Asian countries, where one doesn't have to battle constantly with nature just to survive. I'm from Canada, for example, and literally speaking, 6 months of the year, I mean, it's very cold, to the point of, probably 4 of those months, if not more, there is snow and ice. The growing season is not more than 3 months. 3 months is one is doing good, you know. And therefore, to live in such places, one has to introduce so many artificial means and ways. Of course, those who are living because that's the situation now, they will not be able to follow this particular injunction to the letter. As I mentioned a little earlier, we should know what is the ideal, and we should endeavor to come as close as possible to that ideal, isn't it? And therefore, it will very much depend on individuals or groups of individuals. They should adjust to that particular place, but they should know what is the recommended ideal according to Shastra, and to the best of their ability, try to approach that. You know, in the Western world, places like Canada, I'm sure like Sweden as well, as we have seen, devotees find ways of growing for their maintenance and keeping it. We saw in the video yesterday, Hungary, they have what they call root cellars, where they, after the harvest is normally done in the month of August, and when it begins to get cold, and they grow certain things that will keep for the entire winter, you see. Nowadays, of course, people rely on the transportation of goods from very far away for their survival, which is very risky, because when there are when the climate doesn't allow for vehicles to move, for example, then it creates very difficult situations. So we should know what the ideal is, and then we should know what the concepts and principles as given in the Shastra, what those are, and we should endeavor to become as close to that as possible. Additional thoughts or comments? This probably seems quite remote, alien, and I guess one could give a number of adjectives as well. You know, whether this probably the most common thought that comes to our mind even as devotees, probably more so for those who are not devotees, is this really practical?
Hmm.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So the answer to that question is that yes, it is practical. For a number of reasons, although we may not understandably be able to understand why it is practical and how we as individuals and as a society as well should endeavor to make it become a reality. That is not immediately so easy to understand because we are living a particular lifestyle. Modern society has over the last century especially built up a whole lifestyle which is very far removed from what we are seeing, what we're hearing. But those of us who are devotees, all of us who are devotees, practicing devotees, we know that a very fundamental, essential principle in spiritual life and Vedic culture is that, either the Shastra are correct or they're not. Either the words spoken by our acharyas are correct or they're not. And we know the basic principle also that to be successful in our spiritual life and also to be successful in our material life, as enjoined, as suggested, recommended by Shastra, a fundamental principle is to not only hear from such authorities, but actually have sufficient faith that it is given to us as for our benefit, and that it is also of the domain of the absolute truth. In other words, Shastra and what the acharyas explain, although we may not initially so easily understand, one of our fundamental principles is that our success, our ultimate success, depends on how we receive this knowledge and how we actually put it into practice. And again, because we are so far removed from what is described in the Shastra, especially in the matter of simple living, living in villages, growing our own food, producing only what we need, as we have bread, and using only what we produce. These things initially, just like we understandably cannot relate to that very easily. The main point, however, I would like to make is that this is something that our founder Acharya spoke about extensively, And personalities like Srila Prabhupada or any of our acharyas don't speak about things that are useless. They are far more elevated in their understanding of what is meant to be the ideal for society and for us as individuals. And the more we actually accept, I would say, the injunctions of Shastra, in the least, I would say we should endeavor to try and understand and ultimately to put into practice as well. We were discussing the last few days how actually the majority of people in the world, I would say the majority of devotees as well in the world, are very less conscious or aware of the kind of let's say dangers that await us because we're living this particular lifestyle. We are less aware of all of the bad effects, ill effects that are taking place, and that are directly affecting our individual lives, that are affecting our health, isn't it? And ultimately that have some influence as well on our spiritual practice. We as a movement need to understand that there is a particular mission that our acharyas are endeavoring to follow, and also trying to help individuals and society, beginning with those who are followers of the Vedic culture. Our acharyas are trying to convey to us that, it's there in every single page of the Bhagavatam, that the more we allow ourselves to be living a life that is more materialistic and that doesn't take into account these basic principles in terms of protecting Mother Nature, protecting cows, etc., then we are not properly understanding what is being given in the Shastra, and also we are not, by not taking those instructions given by our acharyas seriously to heart, it means that we are actually going against one of the very basic principles that are there, isn't it? Every day we are meant to recite the 10 offenses against the holy name, and one of those offenses is to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. And it is explained also in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that those who are lacking in faith, Sradhana Purusha Dharmasya Param Tapa Apratyamam Nivartantim Nityu Samsarasmani. Those who are lacking in faith. Faith is the beginning, actually, of spiritual life. Those Sradha, those Sadhu Sangha, Anartha Nivritti, is a whole scientific process by which we can elevate our consciousness, purify our consciousness. And it begins actually with understanding that we ourselves are not able to solve problems or understand things clearly, properly. Therefore, we take guidance from and take shelter of elevated personalities, the acharyas, who know the message that Krishna is giving. We as devotees, we are very few in the world, those who know Krishna, those who take up the process of Bhakti devotional service are very, very few. But those few devotees, because of the knowledge that we are receiving, we should know we inherit a tremendous responsibility, and it is to our benefit that we take up that responsibility, which we cannot do, of course, unless we more clearly, more thoroughly understand what is being conveyed to us, isn't it, by the acharyas. And I should add to this also, it is not only, we could say, this type of information, it could also be in the form of warning. In other words, the more we don't pay attention to what is being conveyed to us, that means the more we continue to go in the wrong direction, we will naturally reap more negative results. There are many people who are not devotees. There are many common people who understand the very precarious condition in which modern society finds itself. And I would say there are more people who are turning towards establishing communities. Our topic this evening was establishing Vedic or building Vedic communities. I came to know some years back, there's an organization called the GEN, Global Eco Network. You can Google it later on. GEN. I highly recommend that you do that. This is an organization. It has nothing to do actually with Krishna consciousness. I'm just making the point that society has become so derailed and so chaotic and causes so much of anxiety and suffering in the world. This organization, for the last 50 years, they just celebrated their 50th anniversary, their golden jubilee, maybe 4 years ago, actually, before COVID. Their main goal actually is to bring awareness amongst people of the need to get away from this artificial lifestyle and to create communities that are called eco villages. And as a matter of fact, every year on different continents, they have like 1 week, maybe seminars or conferences. And a few years back, they actually had their conference in Krishna Valley in Hungary. Somehow, who is now the GBC actually for Hungary, replacing His Holiness Sridhar Maharaj. We saw he was there in the documentary yesterday. His name is Radhakrishna Prabhu. So the devotees agreed to host their yearly conference in the valley, in our community, and those people were so much appreciating what we were doing because it was in line with what they had been working for so many years. They requested this devotee to be one of their members for the European group. And so I'm just making the point that there are many people who are not devotees who are actually more aware, I would say, than many of our devotees of the need, just like the vegans, not to promote veganism as such, but their primary concern is, the tremendous agony and suffering that we are imposing upon so many different living entities, not only cows, but other animals, etc., like that. There's no real philosophical basis to the movement. We're already vegetarians, and we are conscious also of the need to protect other living entities and not create violence, etc., like that. And we have a whole philosophy behind. As a matter of fact, our previous minister for agriculture, Balabhadra Prabhu from the USA, I was discussing with him some years back, and he was mentioning that of all of the vegans that he met, because he would always ask them, he would say, if you knew that milk is coming from a cow that is nicely cared for, protected, would you drink the milk? Because vegans, they say we don't drink milk anymore. So Balakrishna Prabhu was telling that 95% of the people whom he spoke to agreed that they would actually drink milk if it was from cows that are protected. Now there are some vegans who will say no, even if cows are protected, they won't. That's another thing. So the point is that when people who are not devotees are taking, taking the time and becoming concerned about some of these things that we are trying to present here, that Prabhupada spoke about extensively, then this should send a message to us that we also need to give this. And although it may seem difficult initially, we should try to go through these references that I gave at the end, whereby Prabhupada further elaborates on the topic. I think our time is maybe...
Sorry. It's 9.
It's 9, huh? Anything else from the Mataji's side? Or Prabhu's side? Yes.
Maharaj, actually you explained very well the last 3 days. But today actually
Two?
skills to develop before relocating.
Yes.
Can you few points add on that?
You want to list the skills? That's another seminar. Skills, for example, it is if one is going to relocate in the community, one should know about land, about soil, about growing, something that one can practice even before relocating in the community. What is also important, let's say within the community, is interrelationship. Isn't it? That's a whole other dimension. How to how to interact with others, and definitely before anyone or any group of individuals take up such or make such a decision, they should definitely spend sufficient time in knowing one another and developing good relationships, etc. So knowledge about this different skills that one can learn regarding the care of cows, regarding the land in terms of agriculture, regarding management possibly. These are some of the skills that one can learn even before relocating. The more one is equipped with such knowledge and experience, naturally it will make it easier once a person relocates in such an environment. One can begin such, one can come to know also what are the different skills to learn by whenever it is possible by visiting and spending some time in some of these communities, isn't it? We have, I would say, an increasing number of such communities, not only in India, but in other parts of the world. There is definitely, I would say, a growing awareness, and I'm hearing about communities that I've never heard before that have started maybe not too long ago, and we're getting questions or inquiries from different devotees how to set up a community. And I, again, as foreign as it may seem to some of you, I humbly request that you kindly take some time to hear what our founder Acharya is telling us on this subject matter. Srila Prabhupada, for example, he told that even though the rest in one of the discussions, devotees were telling the Prabhupada, cities have been around for a long time, and it seems like they're going to be here for a while too. Prabhupada said that may be, although Prabhupada predicted or mentioned that modern civilization will not continue the way it is, cannot actually, because it's not sustainable. But Prabhupada made the following statement that we, as a society, we as followers of the Vedic culture, we should create our own communities where we are not dependent on modern day society, modern day system that is doomed to perish. This we should understand. It's not my observation, not my words. It is directly Srila Prabhupada's words that modern day civilization, and again, it's not only Prabhupada who's assessing and making this type of statement. Many others also understand that deep-rooted problems that are existing within modern day society because of having thrown out actually some basic concepts and principles, many of which related, of course, to principles of self-sufficiency, land, etc., like that. So at least we should try to hear from the authorities, means Shastra directly, and also very nicely how Srila Prabhupada presents this particular, we could say, aspect of the Krishna consciousness movement, again, which may be less known to many of our devotees, but which is, I would say, becoming, has already become very critical for us to understand this dimension or this aspect. Okay, thank you, sir. So I think we'll close for now. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namaste Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.